5 months ago, Perez was dreaming of winning his first Formula 1 World Championship, and he was just 6 points behind Max Verstappen in the standings. Then, his season unravelled, beginning with a gut-wrenching loss to his teammate in the Miami Grand Prix, followed by a series of 5 qualifying failures. His confidence dropped at the time, and Perez sought help, telling the media, "In the beginning, I was competing for the world title, but from May onwards, that changed. I was driving without confidence." However, while his results began to improve around the British Grand Prix, Perez is again under siege and facing a bombardment of bad headlines. And this time, it could result in him getting the boot. So, will we see Perez on the grid next year? Perez has 223 points after causing crashes in the past 2 races, Singapore and Japan, while Verstappen has 400 points after returning to the top step of the podium following Red Bull's Singapore setback. This backlash has to do with Sergio Perez's shocker accident at the Japanese Grand Prix last weekend. After qualifying over 0.8 of a second behind teammate Max Verstappen in 5th place, Perez's attempted recovery swiftly went badly as he found himself wedged between Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz before the first corner. After receiving a penalty for passing Fernando Alonso under the safety car while pitting for repairs, he lunged down the inside of Kevin Magnussen at the hairpin and collided with the Haas driver, sending Magnussen into a spin and earning himself more damage and a 5-second time penalty. Red Bull retired Perez only to have him re-enter the race, serve his penalty to avoid it potentially becoming a grid penalty in Qatar, and then retire for good. So, does the race, along with a mediocre 2023 in which he collected less points in a considerably stronger RB19 than Lando Norris at McLaren in the last 8 races, jeopardize Perez's status at Red Bull for next year, despite having a contract till the end of 2024? With McLaren hot on their heels and Lewis Hamilton talking of a new Mercedes concept for next season, a tighter title fight could prove Checo to be a liability and cost Red Bull a Constructors' Championship for 2024. Jeroen Bleekemolen, a Dutch racing driver, says it must weigh hard on Perez's mind. "I thought the collision with Magnussen. When you see things like that, yes, you still see that happen in Formula 4 or Formula 3, but that does not belong in Formula 1, he said after the Suzuka race. "I think the mental part is going to be the biggest part now. You just go crazy, you don't understand. How is it possible that he, Max, is always faster? You have the data, the setup, and the same car, but if the gap just gets bigger, you drive yourself crazy." That's what happens. This weekend was very extreme with all those mistakes added. Perez's current condition, according to Bleekemolen, is so severe that unless he snaps out of it, he may end up following former AlphaTauri driver Nick de Vries out of the Red Bull door. "Formula 1 is tough," he said. "If things continue like this, I don't see him driving the entire season next year." That happens more often at Red Bull. If things don't go well during a season, they say, "We're going to change now." If it continues like this, I would actually start seeing what you can do next year as Red Bull. So far they keep saying that he will just be there for the entire season next year, but we've heard that before. When asked which of the AlphaTauri contenders he'd like, the 41-year-old picked out Liam Lawson ahead of Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. "I would give Lawson the chance," he insisted. People immediately say, "But then you always destroy him because he has to work with little experience to sit next to Verstappen." But he is a really great talent, and I think he will also get the chance to develop further. He is new and not the experienced man like Perez already was. He was expected to win races straight away, something he did. Especially when he came to Red Bull. He came in as a top driver. We must not forget that, but he has really played out. Lawson, give him 1 or 2 years, or immediately a 2-year contract for example. Then the pressure is also a bit off. I would do that. It would not be the first time Red Bull pushed a rookie driver to great success, with Bleekemolen citing Verstappen's ascension after only 1 year and 4 races with the junior team. They also quickly put Max in a Red Bull for the same reason, he continued. "Someone is not performing? Come on, get out." I can actually see that happening next year, maybe even sooner. Maybe they'll already have things at the end of this season. But that very much depends on the upcoming races. But as it is for 2024, Sergio Perez looks set, locked in, and as we know after last weekend, AlphaTauri will have Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda driving for them next year. Liam Lawson has thus been selected as Red Bull's backup driver. It would be extremely unlikely for Red Bull to drop Perez and name Lawson, or anyone else alongside Verstappen for 2024 if something happens in the final 6 races. There's no reason to believe Perez won't be alongside Verstappen at the start of next year. However, this does not guarantee Perez's safety during 2024. The one scenario that could arise is if Perez performs more like this than he has in his podium and race-winning pomp at Red Bull earlier this season. Then there's a chance that Red Bull could suffer from that next year if the fight is closer. Whether that challenge is from McLaren or Ferrari or Mercedes, then they won't be able to have one driver who is winning the Constructors' Championship single-handedly, which is what Verstappen is doing at the moment. In that scenario, if you've got Ricciardo excelling at AlphaTauri, then maybe Red Bull would be inclined to dump Perez, put Ricciardo in the Red Bull, and because Lawson is hanging around, if he doesn't get the Williams drive for 2024, you could throw him in the AlphaTauri alongside Tsunoda and just say goodbye to Perez. That's a scenario that, given Red Bull's tendency to make in-season driver changes if they feel they really need to, could happen. But for now, there seems to be no reason to believe Perez won't be starting next to Verstappen in 2024. This also has to do with Perez's marketing value and sponsors, which Lawson doesn't have at the moment. And as we all know, money talks in F1. But what if Perez gets the boot? What would Red Bull's master plan look like? Will they shove Lawson into the Red Bull directly? Is that the reason he's the reserve driver, so he won't break the AlphaTauri synergy next year? Or are they testing to see if Ricciardo or Tsunoda is up for it? The decision to grant Ricciardo a 2024 race seat while keeping Tsunoda appears to have been quite simple, despite Lawson's outstanding stand-in efforts being a possible difficulty. Tsunoda's renewal may have been discussed as time passed, but it was only in question if Honda opted not to continue supporting him, which appeared exceedingly improbable. He's done well this season, more than just justifying Honda and Red Bull's continued trust in him, and keeping Honda's financial backing felt like a formality. While Red Bull Racing and AlphaTauri continue to utilize Honda engines, and Tsunoda continues to drive like he has for the majority of 2023, Honda is expected to continue supporting Tsunoda's seat to the tune of several $1 million each year. Yes, he is a Red Bull kid, but he is first and foremost a Honda protege. While Tsunoda is undoubtedly Red Bull's best candidate on merit, the monetary factor is talking a lot for him. Lawson does not have such an advantage, but Tsunoda has, and Ricciardo has indirect benefits in that regard because he is commercial gold dust. The decision boiled down to what Red Bull wants. Ricciardo's resume speaks for itself and he checks many boxes. Aside from the commercial appeal, his performance in the 2 races he managed before breaking his hand were good enough. He offers experience against Tsunoda's youth, and it's extremely convenient to have him in the car and get a full season of scrutiny, just in case he's an option to replace Sergio Perez at Red Bull Racing in 2025. The importance of experience cannot be overstated. When new AlphaTauri CEO Peter Bayer arrived earlier this year, one of the first things he said was that the team's new identity will most likely require a mix of young and experience. Red Bull expects this team to become more competitive and to have a deeper technical partnership with Red Bull Racing than previously. The drivers are also crucial in this. According to Peter Windsor, Liam Lawson should have earned a 2024 AlphaTauri racing seat. But when asked if AlphaTauri should have given Lawson the seat over Ricciardo, Windsor said, "Well, I think yes is the answer to that. If I was incoming team boss Laurent Mekies, that's what I would do because I think Liam is a real talent. I'm not sure he's as polished as Oscar Piastri, but he's definitely a counterpoint as in what he does incredibly well. I tend to try and stay away from saying, oh, you've got great car control, on the basis that everybody out there, most of them anyway, have great car control. But he's very good. He's like Carlos Sainz. Very young head on his shoulders, but he kind of knows what he does and how he does it, and he comes back and he makes it work. And I love that about watching Liam Lawson. However, just because Lawson didn't get an AlphaTauri seat doesn't mean he won't compete next season, as his reserve driver job means he may be the one to replace Perez if things don't work out for the Mexican driver. And that seems to be the master plan Red Bull have in hand for next season. Asked if Lawson could slip into Perez's seat, Windsor said, I think he could. Absolutely, Liam Lawson would do a good job in Checo's car. But whether Red Bull would do that kind of thing depends on the furor it would cause in Mexico, ongoing contracts with Mexican sponsors. Could that be the move for Red Bull? Take a leap and shove Lawson into that Red Bull. Especially knowing that Tsunoda will move to Aston Martin and Ricciardo is aging. What do you think? Could this be the best strategy for next year? It gives Red Bull the time to see if Perez will perform again, and if not, they have an outstanding youngster ready to go. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. It looks like Perez will have a stressful last 6 races this year.